welcome to a new video. I thought today I would do a little kind of Q&A using the Costuber Tag. Whilst I am hand stitching binding onto one of my skirt samples for my upcoming collection, and I am stuck in the house in quarantine. So I hope you enjoy. So I have the questions on my phone, so if I keep looking away, then that's just what it is. So the first question is, what is your channel name and what's the story behind it? So my name is, or my channel name is Lady Lilith Design, and it is originally from the 7 Deadly Sins, and the kind of demon of lust is called Lilith, and I just liked the name and I thought it was cool, especially when I was a goth. I'm still a goth, but you know, back then I was properly into the whole goth thing, and I just liked it, and it's just something that stuck with me throughout the years, and then obviously as I've become more interested in the more historical side of things, it just kind of became Lady Lilith, which is just sort of an upmarket version of that. So yeah, that's where it came from. And I kind of say that my Victorian alter ego is Lady Lilith, and I have a tattoo of her, or how I envisioned her, on my arm. We'll put a picture up somewhere around here. I don't have a picture of it when it's coloured, but I do have the outline of it, so I'll put that up for you guys. So yeah, that's basically the story of it. It originated from the 7 Deadly Sins, and it just turns into my Victorian alter ego, basically. Number 2, when and why did you start costuming? I can't really remember when. I think I usually say the first corset I made was when I was 15. I used an old school shirt which was fitted to make kind of more of a waspy waist thing. It had eyelets, not very many, and it had boning in the form of cable ties, but it only had it at the side and a little bit at the front to keep the point up. But I would say my first proper corset was, and this is a question that'll come up a bit later, was my Blind Mag corset. But in terms of costuming, I've always loved Victorian fashions, and it's been in the kind of maybe last 5 years that I've properly got into Victorian fashions rather than just corsets. It started with corsets and then it kind of evolved into Victorian fashions in general. So I would say about 5 years for that. And as to why, as I said, more of an evolution kind of thing from corsets into the whole kind of outfit thing. Question 3, how did I get into making YouTube videos? I've made YouTube videos since I was in university, about a range of things. I started on my personal channel doing sort of makeup ones, and I was really into paganism, so I did some videos on paganism, and you know, the festivals and things like that. So it's always been something I've done kind of on and off. And then when I started Lady Lilith Design as an actual business and as something I wanted to do properly, then I focused on kind of my own channel and things like that. Question 4, what is your usual genre of clothing? And it would be the 1890s. I absolutely love the silhouette and just the general style of the 1890s. It's that whole kind of Mary Poppins, even though Mary Poppins was set slightly later, just the little waists is just something that really is, you know, attractive to me, and just the era that I love. And I think it's the most kind of quintessentially Victorian. If you say Victorian to someone who doesn't really know, you know, that the Victorian era was like 60 years long, and there were many changes, that's probably automatically what they would think, that kind of style. Big skirts, little waists, but not you know, massive skirts like the Dickens era stuff, so the 50s and 60s. And I think that's because kind of the Industrial Revolution is something that is celebrated, and it's this, you know, it's one of the main things that the Victorians are known for. Obviously they invented a lot of stuff because the era was so long, but it's just the thing we kind of most associate with the Victorians, I think. Is the whole Industrial Revolution, votes for women started, you know, germ theory really got into its stride. It started in the 1860s, but not a lot of, you know, doctors liked it then, but by the 1890s it was starting to gain traction. Obviously you still had the old doctors who was really set in their ways. So number 5 is, how many costumes have you made? And honestly I do not know. Kind of more full ensembles, I'd say probably 3 or 4. Not many, because I kind of focused on, you know, individual bits. Question 6, what was your first costume? For this, I generally always use my Blind Mad costume, which I actually made back when I just left university, probably 9 years ago. And it was my first proper corset that I made, and it's just, it was the whole, I see it as the whole starting point to where I am now. Signed up for Foundations Revealed, and used their Victorian corset pattern, and yeah, so I'll pop a picture of it somewhere. But that, I always say that's my first costume because it's where I started, and especially where my love of corsetry started. Number 7, which costume is my favourite or my biggest accomplishment? I don't think I have a favourite so far, but I think my biggest accomplishment is probably the kirtle and everything I made for it last year for LARP. If you're on my Instagram, you know that I did it all within about a week and a half, and it was quite stressful at some points, especially when the sleeves weren't working correctly and it was too tight across the back. But I got it done. I learned a new era to sew, and I got a lot of compliments for it, especially as it was wool, and I've never worked with wool. So I think I would say probably that one, because it was a lot of firsts and it came out really well. Question number 8, which is my least favourite costume? Again, I don't really think I have one. I have ones that I haven't been 100% happy with, and you know, as I said earlier, that's generally single pieces, because I haven't got a lot of, you know, full ensembles, so I don't think there is one that I would say is my least favourite. And any kind of singular pieces that I don't wear usually go to the charity shop. I switched to writing the questions down in a bit of paper because I was fed up of keep unlocking my phone. Number 9. What is your favourite local place to go shopping for costume bits? We're quite lucky in Bristol that we have a big fabric land. They have, I think, 8 stores around the country, and we have the biggest. So they have, you know, pretty much all the cottons and everything you need. So that's probably my favourite place to go shopping. There is also another shop called Fabric World, even though it's not local to me. It's about an hour's drive away in Cheltenham. It is the first place that I ever went to, which is very similar to kind of the American garment district shops that you go in, and it's just like 4 floors of roll upon roll upon roll of fabric. Whereas a lot of the shops we have here in Bristol are very organised, they're very just kind of chic and laid out nicely. It's not that kind of, you have to rummage through the fabrics to find, you know, hidden gems. So they're probably my two favourite local-ish shops to go to. Number 10, what is your favourite online shop for fabric or costuming bits? Probably eBay. I have got probably some of the best things to use from eBay. Things like lace and braiding. It's also where I get my silk organza from. And I've always found it's very good quality. And it's a site I've used for years. And I just, I like using it and finding things. Number 11, commercial, hand drafted, or just winging it when it comes to patterns. I used to be quite against commercial patterns because there weren't a lot of historically specific pattern companies. You had like the big four, like McCall's and Simplicity, but I didn't know about places like Truly Victorian and Reconstructing History when I first started. So I started self-drafting a lot of my outfits, and some would turn out okay, but most would be just kind of meh. But then I started using commercial patterns in the form of kind of Truly Victorian. So it's kind of both. I've never been a just winging it person. That scares me. I've always needed instructions of some kind. So, if I was self-drafting, I'd use a block from my pattern drafting book, or obviously I'd use a pattern. Number 12, favourite or most used pattern. Probably would be the Truly Victorian 1894 shirtwaist. I have 5 of them. I have another one with the material cut out, and then I have material for 2 more that haven't been cut out yet. So that's probably my most used and favourite pattern, because it just gives you that quintessential late Victorian shape with the big sleeves. And I've also got the sleeve pack, the 1890 sleeve pack from Truly Victorian, and that gets used quite a lot as well. Number 13, machine, hand sewing, or both. If you've been with me for any length of time, you know I really don't like hand sewing, even though I'm doing it now. But it's a necessary evil to have a nice finish, and I always use machine for the bulk of my sewing, but I always try and hand finish it as much as I can, because it just gives that kind of handmade feel, that love, that you finished a garment, with your own hands. It just takes a long time. Even though I do it quite a lot, I've never got particularly fast at it. So I find it a bit of a bore. Number 14, historically accurate, historically inspired, or both? Probably both. I don't think I would ever be one of those people who did it completely historically accurate down to the hand stitching like Bernadette Banner, but I do like to have the historical shape. So it's always a bit of both, really. So like the shape might be accurate, but the methods to make it would be kind of modern. Number 15, do you use vintage or thrifted fabrics? No. I might use some thrifted bed sheets for mock-ups and things like that, but I've never really used vintage or thrifted fabric, just because it's never been something that's come up. And if I'm making something, I know what the fabric I want to use, and you generally can't find that in the charity shop. 16, favourite fabrics to work with and why? I don't really have a favourite fabric to work with. For most of my sewing, career, I've used cotton, and it's only in the last year or so that I've started using other fabrics like wool and silk. So I don't really have a lot of experience with other types of fabric. So since cotton is the only one I, have a lot of experience with, I would have to say cotton. 17, have you revamped any old costumes, and what did you change. I have revamped an old costume, an old ball gown, and I do have a video about that, which I'll stick up in the iCards for you and link down in the description. So it was a bodice and a long skirt. I kept the bodice pretty much as it was. I added some lace and put a few darts in. The underskirt I shortened, and then I kind of bustled the overlay that I had just to make it kind of more historically inspired to go to a modern bar, because I just didn't want to, you know, wear a full ball gown in a bar. 18. How has costuming affected your life? I don't think it really has. I wear a lot of my kind of shirtwaist to the Muggle job, and you know, I get some compliments on it and people really like the big sleeves and things, but I wouldn't say it has affected my life. I've always been different in what I wear because I grew up as a goth, and I've always been historically inspired. You've made this lovely thing, it fits well, it looks great, you feel fabulous, and then you've got to finish it and it's all the little things like buttonholes and buttons and hand sewing the binding, and it's just like you want to wear it but you have to do all this stuff first just in case it unravels, and yeah, so that's probably the thing I dread the most, is the finishing. 20. What's your favourite part about costuming? When it's finished, the wearing. And the seeing it come together and coming up with ideas and thinking, oh, I could put braiding or a pilique or beading or all this stuff on it. And then when it's finished, getting to wear it. So the beginning and the end I really like. It's the middle bit that I don't enjoy. 21. What is your favourite entertainment for when you're costuming? So I guess sewing. I generally watch a series I've watched 1,000 times before. At the moment I am watching Star Trek Voyager. I watched all of Star Trek The Next Generation before that, and it's just something nice to have on in the background. Sometimes I listen to music, but I don't do that as much anymore. And sometimes I'll listen to podcasts if there's no one else in the studio, because I like listening to podcasts about true crime and serial killers and things like that, and I think people will just think I'm a bit strange, you know, for listening to that stuff. 22. How many hours do you spend costuming a week? So actually sewing, a lot. Pretty much when I'm not at the Muggle job, I am costuming. So if I had to add it up, it's a bit strange now that I'm in quarantine. Everything is just a bit weird, but going back before quarantine, I would say probably 25 hours a week I spend costuming and sewing, and not just that, thinking about sewing, thinking about the things I want to make, editing videos, filming videos. 23. How long does it take you to complete a project? Longer than I'd like. I always start a project and think, oh yeah, it won't take that long, and then it takes ages, and then I get that thing where you're in the middle of it and you're just like, it's taking so long, it's going to be rubbish, blah blah blah. And I'm not a very patient person, so I kind of have to rely on James to say, it'll be okay, it's going to take time, you can't help that, which works sometimes, doesn't work other times. I would say a skirt might take me a day or a day and a half. For a whole ensemble, it'll probably take me a couple of weeks. If I'm, you know, taking my usual time and I haven't got an immediate deadline. If I've got an immediate deadline, I could probably do it in a week, but it wouldn't be enjoyable. 24. What is your favourite place to take photos? I'm quite lucky in that I live next to a big field called the Down. You can walk pretty much from the big yellow castle in North Bristol to Ashton Estate in South Bristol, and probably only go on one or two roads or through one or two housing estates. It's pretty much green. I think it is greenbelt all the way there, so it's quite nice. We get a lot of deer as well, kind of coming across our street. They found their way through. So that's where I usually take my photos. There's kind of a mini field that's surrounded by trees, and it has this massive tree in the middle, which is where I take a lot of my photos. 25. Summer or winter costumes? I don't think I really got anything that is distinguished between summer and winter. It's all ensembles. Yeah. I haven't yet found something that I can wear in summer and don't just completely overheat. I could maybe try an Edwardian tea dress, you know, lots of linen and thin layers. That might work, but it's all just kind of ensembles. There isn't really a distinction that I've got in my wardrobe, or my costuming wardrobe. 26. Favourite colours to work with? I mean, my favourite colour is purple, and I do have a few purple garments, but the colour I've probably worked the most with is, I'd say, blue or black. I have some red as well, but yeah, it's blue or black. 27. What are you currently working on? So costuming wise, it would be my ball ensemble for the Prior Tribe Ball for next year. But I'm also working on 1,000,001 other things. So I'm working on my collection, so doing samples and getting new patterns and things like that. But I'd say costuming wise, it's the ball ensemble, and I'm also trying to finish the 1870s inspired nursing outfit, which I'm hoping to get up and photographed by the 12th of May for International Nurses Day. And in the current climate, I think, you know, our nurses and health professionals need to be celebrated because they are putting their lives on the line to help people and save people, along with other key workers such as grocery store workers. And I used to work in a grocery store, and I couldn't imagine trying to, you know, cope with everything that is going on. 28. What is your next project? So after the ball ensemble, I want to work on some jackets, because I have some walking skirts in my wardrobe that I don't want to wear until I finish the jackets to go with it, because they are part of my family inspired costumes. 29. What is your dream project? I have a dress on Pinterest which is an Edwardian tea gown, and it looks like it's crocheted, like the full thing is crocheted, but it lays so nicely because it's like cutting something on the bias. It just hugs curves. So if I ever learn to crochet, which is something I keep saying I'm going to do, that's something I'd want to make. I'll pop a picture up somewhere and put it in the description, but something like that, it's just, I mean, I really like kind of the froofy Edwardian Gibson girl styles, but I've never made one. But if I learnt to crochet and I, you know, set aside an hour each night to make something like that, that would be a dream come true. 30. Do you have any other hobbies? No. I don't have any other hobbies. Literally, if I'm not sewing, and I'm not at the muggle job. I'm probably watching YouTube. I just don't really have any other hobbies. I am trying to write a book at the moment. So I could say probably that, but yeah. In terms of hobbies, I don't really have any. 31. What is your favourite thing about Costuber? I think it's because it's something that accepts everybody, and especially people from the LGBT community. As someone who is in that community themselves, I like the fact that it's very, very welcoming, and you know, a lot of the big names in the community are part of the LGBT community as well, and I just think it's something that is very accepting. And obviously we have gatekeepers like any other kind of community, but it's accepting of everyone, and it's a chance for us to look back at history and say we existed back then. You know, there were pioneers of these communities, but it was something that wasn't, you know, 100% socially acceptable back then. But now we can say, well, sod it. Now it's socially acceptable, and now we can bring those costumes back to life and be ourselves at the same time, because we're allowed to be. And I also think that's true for people of colour who are in the community as well. And forgive me, this isn't something I have experience with myself, but I know there are naysayers and say, well, back then you would have been a slave, or you would have had a menial crap job, but you know, they still had their own culture, and I think that's something sad to not have any really research on. It was a problem I found when I had a birthday party a couple of years ago, and I wanted to do a Victorian kind of picnic up on the Paradown, and I have a friend who is half Malaysian, and I was trying to find historical examples of costume that, you know, was around in China and Malaysia and Asian countries, and it's quite hard to find on, you know, a general search engine like Pinterest. It's just not something that's around, and I think that's very, very sad. So I think it's nice that people who are part of a community that isn't in the spotlight or isn't normative has a chance to say, well, this is what our community looked like back then, this is how our community did things, and we can all learn. And I think that's the point of life. And I'm sorry if I'm getting a bit, you know, deep and hippie about it, but that is the whole point of life, to look at other people's views that you don't have an experience with and say, oh, that's really interesting, and just love each other. So that's my favourite thing about Costuber. That went on a bit of a side rant, but yeah, that's probably my favourite thing about Costuber and the community we are in. And even though we do have gatekeepers, you know, the general majority of people are fabulous, and there are people who are willing to read all the books and look at all the sources, and then there are people who are just like, well, I like the shape of that thing, or I like the cut of that thing, and want to wear it, and we're all just like, great, everyone be yourselves. And I saw a meme on Facebook, I think it was yesterday, that was like, society, be yourself. Also society, but not quite like that. And I think in the costume community, we don't have that second caveat of be yourself, but not like that, which I really like. So I hope you enjoyed this little Q&A. I kind of enjoyed doing it. I have never done a Q&A before, and it was just nice to have a proper think about things. in a different way. So if you did enjoy, don't forget to like, comment and subscribe, and check out the down bar below for more ways to support me. And I hope you all have a lovely day and you're all staying safe and happy and well.